Okay, it's now 12:01. This is Michael McClellan with Levine Electronics and Electrics. Thank you all so much for coming to another COVID-19 Lunch and Learn webinar. Today we have with us Bill Hollemeyer from ESL, and he is on the side of ESL that produces entertainment power solutions. I think it's a very niche product, but is very helpful to folks in temporary areas such as stages, concerts, arenas, music venues, and that kind of thing. And a couple housekeeping items. One is your phones are on mute since this is a webcast, but you can ask questions, and we would love for you to ask questions. There is a question box on the right side of your screen where you can press the question button and type in a question, and we would love to answer it at the end of the webcast. We do have a couple polls for you guys. I'm going to get one started right now just to kick it off and just to kind of figure out who our audience is today. So the question is, do you do work for stadiums, arenas, entertainment companies, music venues, or video production companies? And if you could just answer yes or no. And don't hang up if you answered no. There's a lot of good information in this webinar, even if you're not in one of those industries. So we'll leave that up there for about another 30 seconds. And while we're doing that, why don't you tell, Bill, why don't you go ahead and just tell the folks a little bit about yourself?
Okay, all right. Thanks, Michael. I hope everybody can hear me okay. So, yeah, my name is Bill Hollemeyer. I work at ESL Power Systems out here in California. We manufacture a wide variety of things based around interlock safe receptacles, basically. So we're in a couple of different, arenas based on that. We do reefer type outlets. We do obviously the entertainment, which is my focus. And then a lot of you may be familiar with our emergency power products, generator connection boxes, manual transfer switches. So we make a pretty wide variety of UL certified equipment, electrical equipment, and been pretty successful at it. And the entertainment portion of it has really been up and coming as of late. So pretty excited about that. A lot of stadium and arena type work, theaters, pretty much any place where somebody needs portable power for entertainment purposes. So yeah, I'm really excited to give this presentation. I hope everybody gets something out of it, and please, feel free to type in your questions there and try to answer them. And we'll have a question portion at the end. Since everybody's typing their questions, I guess go ahead and type them as you think of them, and then we can get to them as we go. So that's actually pretty convenient. I'll go ahead and start here when I think I need to wait, right, for the poll to get done, Michael?
Yeah, just closed out the poll. We had quite a few yeses, so proceed.
Great. Okay. All right, thank you. So everybody can see the screen okay, I hope, right, Michael? You're seeing it right now? I just want to make sure because it told me that it turned it off temporarily.
Yes, I see it.
Working properly. Going to the next. All right, so the objectives of this webinar was to provide an understanding of the company switch, specifically ESL's company switch. There are a variety of company switches out there, but we feel like ours is the best. And we wanted to talk about, so we call ours, it's branded as the show switch. We're going to talk about what is a company switch. We're going to talk about what kind of applications, where would you use the company switch and all that sort of thing, and in details about it. Custom options, also a pin and sleeve option that we offer. It's a tiny company switch, if you will. And we'll talk a little bit about the drawings, the way that you may see these. Hopefully that'll be useful to our audience here, as far as how you may see these on drawings or how you may draw them yourself into the drawings, which, by the way, ESL is happy to help any engineers with dropping in specifications. We have a CSI formatted spec. We have drawings, AutoCAD or SolidWorks or whatever format you need really to drop directly into projects. And then I'll show you a little bit, a little bit of shock and awe with the installations and all that stuff there at the end, just to give you an idea of where you'll see this kind of equipment, where we've been installing it lately. And then, as I mentioned, stadium and arena seems to be really upcoming. So at the end, we've added a new section where we talk about some of the larger equipment that they're based off of company switches, similar to the company switch idea, cam outlets, circuit protection, circuit breaker protection. So we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. So here we go. We'll go ahead and dive in. So what is a company switch? There you go. There's an example of our company switch. This is our latest model. It's as I mentioned, a specialized type of disconnect. So it's got a circuit breaker inside of it. Ours is manually, when you open the door handle, you kill the breaker. So it's a manual disconnect, hard disconnect. We think that's really a superior way to do it. It's safe, and that's the idea with these company switches, is that a lot of times these venues. So this is a permanent installation that's mounted, say, on the side of the stage. The event is providing this power, and they're going to have roadies or whoever are going to come in. People who are not directly affiliated with the event are using it. So the whole idea with the company switches is that they are very safe and very simple to use, obviously. So, and you'll see as we proceed through it, it really is quite a simple, setup. And it's very safe too. So that's good, because obviously, as I mentioned, the venues don't want to have these people who aren't even really affiliated with them. When they're using these, they really want it to be as safe as possible. So safety is paramount. And this is the sort of thing that would drive power for lighting, sound, a huge variety of things, really. Just anytime that you need portable power that'll be connected through cams, that's or direct lugs. We'll talk about that too. This is the preferred method to do so. And so what differentiates these from a more simpler disconnect is things like indicating lights, and of course, as I mentioned, the safety interlock circuit breaker is huge. And then of course we have different methods. Either we use industry standard 400 amp rated cam receptacles on the bottom, and so there'll be one per phase, neutral and ground. We can accommodate dual neutral and other options. We'll talk about that as well. And all this applies to the industry as a whole. All my competitors do similar things. So the direct wire connection is actually lugs behind the cams inside the company switch down the bottom, and it'll allow for, if they're coming in with bare wires and they just don't have the single stab cams, then they can just come in with bare wires. That's not a preferred method, and I try to talk people out of that as much as possible when I'm talking to end users, because you'll eventually really thrash those cables and they end up not, you have to trim them and do all kinds of stuff. So it's really nice to be able to use the single pole cams, and our standard company switch actually comes with just the cam receptacles. And we'll also talk about the pin and sleeve when we get to that part. So just to give you a little more detail, looking at the inside of the company switch here, you can see that it's got dead front construction across the front there, plenty of warning labels and things like that. We do everything, we're following all the correct standards. These are built to UL 891. They're safe, completely safe. You can see in the center there where the interlock handle pops through the dead front, and so when you close the door, the handle on the front actually will kill the breaker. So every time you open the door, the unit is dead. And so that's kind of the raison d'etre for these things. It's very safe that way. It's got the indicator lights across the top there, you can see, and telling you that the power is on. I do want to make mention, if you guys use ESL, our latest model is showing phase A, B, and C. That's our latest rendition, finding that the industry as a whole seems to kind of focus in on that. So we did that for a number of reasons. This particular one has, some extra, and of course we make this newer model here. We also offer, we'll add additional lights if people, require them, ground, that sort of thing. So just wanted to mention that was kind of an option. We're actually looking at the last generation company switch here, which had more lights on it. So the indicating lights are, to tell, especially like say in a theater, they want to make sure they can see from a distance that the unit's up and powered and all the phases have power available. So the little viewing window allows them to see that. And as I mentioned, it's safety interlocked. It's super safe. It's got the cams across the bottom there. You can see the receptacles. And there's a little space there between ground and neutral where you can potentially have another neutral. You could have an isolated ground. You could have various configurations. We can do 6 cams. We can do 7 cams. And then also direct lugs, which would actually be behind those cam receptacles that you see right there. And as I had mentioned, they're just the industry standard Series 16 cam style receptacles. And we can make the unit in different environmental types, of course, type 1, type 3R, type 3RX. Just an interesting note is that these cannot be 4X. I do see them specified that way sometimes, so we have to have a discussion about that because they have openings on the bottom to allow for portable cables. Therefore, they can never truly be 4X because, they would fail a hose down test. So, but they're built to 4X standards, continuous seam welding all around, and they, and it's a very hardy powder coat on there too. And 3RX would be, the outside version made out of stainless, and so, very sturdy. We've got installations down by the ocean in a few different places, and they do just fine. So, and we have a lot of experience in stuff down by the ocean too, doing reefer outlets. We have a lot of problems with corrosion down there at those locations. So for the most part, the most entertainment venues won't really have, they're probably going to be specifying type 1s. They're going to go inside of the venue, inside of the theater, or whatever, wherever you're at. So, and also we offer custom mounting options, which I can talk a little bit about too. For the most part, they just mount directly onto the wall with tabs, 4 tabs, and so very simple to mount. And the contractor will come in with the conduit through the upper portion, up where you see the indicating lights. That's the prescribed location to come in with the conduits. The bottom portion is reserved for portable cabling. Some of the options that I kind of touched on briefly previously, and some new ones you haven't seen yet. So of course, 100% rated circuit breaker is an option. We have a dual combo unit, which I'll show you an example of later. It's basically 2 company switches in one cabinet, and it gets specified on occasion because they have 1 feed coming in and they want to have more than 1 company switch at that location, so it'll be a combo unit. As we mentioned, the various environmental types that are available. You can have isolated ground. This particular unit is showing dual neutral. This particular unit is it's a type 3R. They're always painted this lighter color in order to not absorb heat. The internal ones that go into a theater in particular are black like this one, to kind of be a little bit nondescript. They don't want it to be obvious. They want it to be kind of hidden, generally darker in the theater. So that's the way to go with this. But for outdoors, we would definitely recommend a light color, to reflect the heat and try to keep the unit a little cooler. We can offer the dual neutral as mentioned. We can reverse the gender on the neutral and ground, not a problem. That's done quite a bit in the industry as well, just a kind of another foolproof method to make sure that people aren't plugging a phase into ground or neutral. We offer flush mount assemblies. They look great. They're very nice, and they give more space. They're popular if you are in a hallway and you have limited room. We can actually make it a flush mount unit that will go into the wall. And we offer the various colors, as I mentioned, black and this gray. It's RAL 7035 gray. But we can do other custom colors. It's not a problem. A lot of times people want to match, the color to the scheme. The architect wants it to look a certain way, so we can do that. And then the direct wire lug connections, as mentioned. Now in this, with the door open here, you can see clearly on this one the lugs down on the bottom below the receptacles and behind the receptacles. And there's a door down in the extreme bottom. You see a couple of metal screw heads there. That's so that door slides back and forth to allow you to either use direct wire or receptacles. You know, one or the other. You can't do both. So that's an option. And this particular unit has the digital ammeter. It's very nice. You know, it's a nice look to it. It's functionally, it shows all three phases at the same time. It can switch between amperage, voltage. You know, you can show a couple of different things with it. So that's an option that people do want on occasion. And then a connection chamber work light, a refrigerator light. So when you open the door, the light will come on in the bottom chamber there, so you can see more clearly. And that's very popular here on the theatrical style one in particular. You know, it's hard to see in there, it's pretty dark, so they want a chamber light. So that's an option, connection chamber work light that we offer as well. And these are, you know, typically requested options. We go anywhere from just your most basic company switch, just has 5 cams, you know, 3 phases, ground and neutral, that's it, up to, you know, the Cadillac, which has the direct lugs and the digital ammeter and you name it, dual neutral, you know. So we can do that, we can do it all. And so, as I mentioned earlier, talking about mounting options. So the pedestal, you know, if they're going to be coming in, the contractor's going to be coming in from the bottom, then the pedestal is a great solution. You know, freestanding, doesn't need a wall. It's out. I'll show you an installation later. A very nice, clean installation with the pedestal. It's not a lot more expensive, really, than the wall mount version. It's just, you know, more metal. So it's a nice option. It looks very nice. I think it's a great looking unit. In the middle there, the flush one that we talked a little bit about. So, you know, it actually goes into the wall, and that's why it's got the flange around the front there. You fasten, you know, fasten it into the wall with that. And I also have a picture of how that installation looks. It looks very clean. On the flush mount, a minor consideration is that the cables come out the front, and you may see on the flush mount unit here the trap door on the front. Same thing on the pad mount, really. The trapdoor on the front, because the cables are actually going to drape out through there. So you know, you pop down the trapdoor, portable cables come out through there. You click it back up and close the door, and the door actually has a little lip on it, which will hold that closed. You know, once again for safety when it's not being used, so people can't get their hands in there. But but that would remain open for when the portable cables are actually in use. You know, just draping out through that little trapdoor there. And then over on the right, the Big Daddy combo unit that I had mentioned to you earlier. So it's really 2 company switches inside of a giant cabinet. And what you see up there on the top portion could be a main circuit breaker, you know, if the customer desires, or we just land on a PDB. You know, the contractor just comes in and lands on a power distribution block, and then we factory wire from that to the company switch, you know, sections. We do that here at the factory. And you can see that this combo unit also has the 3-phase light setup that I was describing earlier, and lifting eyes up at the top as well, removable. So I wanted to talk a little bit about single lines. I don't know how many of you may be engineers, or, you know, I'm sure everybody's probably looked at drawings. So I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the things about single lines because I see them all the time. And so what is the incoming wire size to be accommodated? You know, if you're an engineer, make sure you tell me that. Believe it or not, sometimes on drawings I don't see it, you know, a conduit schedule or any kind of indication of the incoming wires. And in that case, we'll just assume that it's going to be within, you know, standard ranges for the appropriate amperages. So we definitely look for that. We like to see, you know, exactly how many conduits and what size will they be. Is 200% neutral, double neutral, is that required? Is an isolated ground required? Are direct wire lugs needed? That's, you know, may or may not be on the single line, might be in the specifications. Is a digital ammeter required? Once again, probably in the specs more likely, and the interior work light, the same thing, you know, all those options that we described earlier. And then, you know, importantly, will the switch be inside or outside? You know, so we can determine what kind of enclosure it needs. It makes, you know, a difference. The Type 1 enclosure is a bit more inexpensive than the Type 3R. And then, you know, other items, other company switch, you know, related items or entertainment related items. ADA pedestals is sort of a new one. We've been putting those into stadiums. Broadcast truck boxes, which are sort of like, they're like a show switch on steroids. I'll show you some of those. They're really huge. They're used for the satellite trucks at big venues, football games, things like that, stadiums and arenas. They'll come in, they have a special parking lot they go to, and they have these broadcast truck boxes where they plug in and they get their power from. And the broadcast truck box also happens to have a signal compartment in it. They plug into that to uplink, the games going out to wherever, to their central location. And then food concession power is a thing. I just mention it in case any of the attendees, food concession is something we can do as well. These are basic boxes. We've been seeing more and more at arenas that have receptacles in them. They're boxes that go into the wall. A lot of times they're flush mount and they go around the causeway. And the hot dog vendors and popcorn vendors, they'll plug into these boxes. They also have a little point of sale, plug in so that they can to do all the cash register part of it and all that stuff. So those are additional items that we've the line's expanding more and more as we go along. And just a quick look at the way that you may see these. I kind of wanted to point out with this that sometimes I see them as disconnects, like over on the left. Really, the engineer's drawing it as showing it as a disconnect, but it's a company switch. You can see from the wording that he's calling it as a company switch. And then over on the right, the engineer got really fancy and actually drew a pictogram basically of a company switch, even including double neutral down there. You can see at the bottom. So very, very detailed. And on both of these examples, they were good about calling out the conduit and calling out the incoming wires. So that's wonderful. So just an example of how you may see these, and you'll see these theaters a lot, as I mentioned, arenas, stadiums lately. There'll be like a lot of these casinos, so many different. We'll talk about the different kinds of venues too as we go along. So the pin and sleeve that I had mentioned earlier, which is a tiny company switch, if you will. So this little single gang box here, basically like a bread box size, has a pin and sleeve on the front, and it is UL listed. These are used in theaters, not as much as company switches, but I'll see these out in the audience section or out on the back wall behind the audience section, generally mounted on the wall with the receptacle facing downwards. And some of the specs you can see there in the text I provide. I mean, they have the 5100 R9W pin and sleeve. So it's single cable. It's a different approach than the single cam cables that we use on our standard company switches. But this seems to be pretty popular. I see it spec'd quite a bit, and we sell quite a few of these, not as many as the company switches, but wanted to mention it because it is another option. And it can go up to 100 amps. We have them in 60 amp, 100 amp currently, and it's an inexpensive option for 100 amps of power as compared to a full-size company switch, about half. So it is something, if you were to be specifying or if you were looking at options for how to inexpensively bring in, theatrical power, the pin and sleeve may be the option. And we feel like this is a really great little unit. It's actually based off of our reefer outlet business. Same idea, single gang. This is actually 4X construction, this particular one. As of late, we've created a type 1. This one we're looking at right here is 4X. It's got gasketing, all around and continuous seam welding, so it could 100% be hosed down and be fine. So that's good. And it has, most importantly, once again, it has our safety interlock circuit breaker integrated inside of it. So inside of that enclosure right there, you've got the mechanism which connects the circuit breaker to that push-pull rod on the front. And in addition, because of the way the mechanism works, if you try to make or break under load, it'll pop the breaker. So if you try to pull the plug out, it'll kill the breaker. And if you try to pull, you can't, it's completely safe in that way because we've interlocked, the breaker to the receptacle to ensure that it's always dead until, you've actually completely mated the plug. So completely safe as well. And it does, we do have the option for a lockout on it, the tethered lockout device. And it's simple to mount, 4 bolts. So that's a sort of an inexpensive small company switch, if you will. I mean, it's really a single gang pin and sleeve receptacle is what it is. And you may see these called out in this fashion. You know, as I mentioned, so in this particular one, they had pin and sleeves around the outside perimeter of the theater, and quite a few of them. So talking about some of that stuff, you know, the arena type, larger equipment that I had mentioned earlier. First on the left there, you have the, you know, this is a concession item that I was describing. You know, the hot dog vendor comes in and plugs into it. You can see it. So it actually mounts into the wall like an ATM, very, you know, flush and clean. And then inside there, we have a 100 amp on this particular version. We have 100 amp pin and sleeve. We have a couple of 20 amp GFCIs. We've got, I think it's a 30 amp receptacle twist lock down there in the middle. And then at the bottom left, you'll see it's really just the back box for the point of sale. We at ESL, we don't actually provide the you know, the digital portion of it. That's provided by others. But it has the rubber flap you'll see on the door there, you know, to kind of protect the cables coming in and out through the hinged trap door that you see in the center there. So, you know, once again, they're going to plug all this in and then close the door, and just the cables will be hanging out. It's pretty clean. In the middle there and on the right of it, in the center section there, so that's the big boy I was talking about, the show switch on steroids, if you will. It has cams down the bottom, and it has some, these are all, you know, these are custom, almost always, you know, they're custom. So we'll see the same basic design, but it's, you know, have different combinations of receptacles, different amperages. Sometimes it has a back section that matches the front section. So really you can walk around the whole thing and have power compartment. So there's a power compartment on the right that you see there. It's got the MLO inside of it. And then over on the left, you'll see the signal compartment where this is where the broadcast truck guys are going to put their equipment. And I believe what they do at showtime is they'll come in, they actually mount in, you know, their equipment, their rack mounted equipment, their uplink stuff. So that all goes over into that left compartment there, the signal compartment, which has standard 19-inch racks in it. And power is provided inside of that compartment also, just standard 20 amp receptacles. So this is a very popular item. We've you know, seen a lot of installations of these, the LA Stadium, the Raiders Stadium, Kannapolis Ballpark out in Florida. You know, I've been quoting these like crazy. Every stadium and arena that you can think of, and these are a big exciting item. You know, it's you know, a lot bigger deal than a company switch. And last but not least, over on the right there, the as I was calling it, the ADA pedestal slash GFCI pedestal. I mean, it has a GFI in it, and you know, we were marketing it as an ADA pedestal. We have a bunch of these at the LA Stadium as ADA pedestals. They're going next to the wheelchairs in that section of the stadium, and this particular one's, you know, fairly short because of that. It's about 24 inches tall, I think. But you know, we can fab these enclosures, and they follow our same, you know, standards. We have continuous seam welding. You can see it's a very nice looking unit, and they sell surprisingly well. I'm getting a lot of inquiries for these as well. It's a small. It's the opposite of the middle thing. It's a super small item, but we can do that as well. So. And just a little bit, you know, so this is the way that we're seeing the broadcast truck unit that I had mentioned. This is the way that we're seeing it drawn up a lot of times, and it's always following the same, pretty much the same format. And we're seeing this in a lot of stadiums and arenas. And so you can see from that right there kind of what we're talking about. I mean, this thing's, you know, basically it's a, you know, like 5 foot, it's a pretty good size. It's like a power mount, basically, you know, it's almost 4 foot tall, you know, 5 foot wide. Sometimes it can be double depth, so 5 foot in depth as well. So it's a pretty good size, you know, unit. And the way that we've seen it on single lines is over on the right there. And I wanted to show this because it's kind of all over the place. The engineers, sometimes you'll see that the broadcast, so up there on the top right, they call it out as a broadcast truck unit with multiple company switch icons inside of it, you know, sort of disconnects with cams in the bottom of it. But what they really meant, once you looked a little deeper in the specs and everything else, is what you see over on the left. And the same thing for the bottom portion there. where the SE Plaza stage and the East Plaza stage, those two units. Once again, they're referring to what you see on the left there, the detail you see on the left, but they've just drawn it a little bit differently. So sometimes it takes a little bit of work to kind of, a little digging to figure out exactly what they mean, because there doesn't seem to be any standardized, icon for broadcast truck power. The Plaza ones on the lower right there, those just have 5 cams. So you would see it's the same exact design you see over on the left. The broadcast truck up on the top right, where they have what looks like two company switches inside of one dashed line, inside of one unit. That's actually the double unit I was describing. So it's the detail you see over on the left, and then that same detail on the back side. Both sides have the same thing, a power compartment and a signal compartment. So you actually have 2 sets of cams, and that's why they showed it the way that they did up there. So just kind of wanted to give you a little view of how those look on drawings. And so up on the upper left here, as you can see, and that's actually at Madison Square Garden. So these are some flush mount company switches that we installed a long time ago over there. And they, as you can see, very clean. This hallway that they're in, it looks to me like it's where the players are coming in. So obviously it needs to be very, that was the idea, is that we needed to have plenty of space, and you wanted this to really be tucked out of the way. You can see that our handles are even recessed, and that's true across all the company switches. And that's to prevent, you don't want to have the handle on the outside getting knocked off accidentally. So that's why there's a little recessed pocket on all the company switches with the handle actually below the surface, of the door. On the lower left there, just to give an example of how it might be used as a loading dock, which it is. I see quite a bit of that too. I believe that's at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. In the middle section, I mentioned earlier, I would talk about different ways that these can be mounted. So you see here, they have a stanchion that they're mounting this on. Even then, if you look closely, you'll see the tabs, the 4 mounting tabs that are standard on our company switches are how they are mounting it. So, pretty standard installation. This is actually at a tennis garden, Indian Wells Tennis Garden out in California. And they're light colored, as I mentioned, they're outside. And then on the right there, that is the pad mount that I was mentioning, that a real nice clean installation that's actually down at the marina in San Diego, the Marriott in San Diego. They have a bunch of these units just like that outside. And they do like street venue things right out there on the, there's a little parking lot to the left here that you can't see, but they, they'll actually do shows out there, and boom, there you go. You've got your, as I mentioned, you can come in from the bottom with the conduit. It's a complete, nice looking, aesthetically pleasing unit. And, it's a complete company switch, but it's just a different way. It's a pad mount version. It looks quite nice, I think. Sell a fair amount of those as well. And then just to give you an idea, as I mentioned earlier, what all types of venues do these actually go into? Well, here you go. These are actual examples of ones where we have company switch installations currently. And so you can see stadiums and arenas, and they're really ranking highly lately. I'm getting a lot of, they'll often be as many as 40 company switches in an arena. And then maybe a few broadcast truck power units as well. A lot of equipment going into those stadiums and arenas. Hotels and universities, we get business all the time from Vegas, basically all the casinos, the hotels, any place that they're going to have entertainment of any kind, you'll see, our company switches in those locations as well. And as of late, quite a bit of activity from studios, TV studios, and we're getting quite a bit of that kind of business as well. And then of course, convention centers, they need temporary power all the time. And theaters and theme parks, and we get a lot of business from Disneyland. They hide our company switches in the bushes so that they don't ruin the immersion experience. So we have, and paint them green. So yeah, we have a bunch of these are a very popular item, and it's a niche item for sure. But there's quite a bit of a good chunk of pie out there to be gotten. So and then as well, churches, parks, and really anywhere people congregate, and if there's entertainment. I've even gotten inquiries from the New York Department of Transportation that they wanted to put standalone company switches out in small park areas out throughout the city. So hopefully maybe that's an up and coming project where really that's the thing. They have a company switch out there. It's, locked down, of course, and they can just use it to, have impromptu concerts or whatever they need to do out there. So a lot of opportunities for company switches out there. And really, basically, that's it. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask away, type away. And it's been a real pleasure sharing this with you. I hope it was informational, and I hope everybody got a little something out of it. And with that, I guess I'll turn it back over to Michael.
That was great, Bill. Thank you. Don't see any questions right now.
Right, yeah, I'm looking at the question section there. And
is there a difference between a show switch and a company switch?
No, a show switch is just our branding for a company switch. We call it the show switch. It's even got a little TM next to it, trademark. So no, that's just our wording for it is a show switch. But it's just a company switch.
Okay, here's a question. This is a great question. Do you offer an arc flash solution to reduce the incident energy of the upstream circuit breaker?
That's like the what is it, ECMS, I think. The only option that we have within our company switch, it's a very simple unit. We do offer a shunt trip in there, which could be used, pretty much for any usage really. So as it relates to that, we provide the company switch as a complete unit, and almost never really have we ever dabbled in what's going on outside the company switch. I hope that makes sense for numerous reasons, liability and other. But not to say that if that was something that was needed, we have had inquiries as of late about. I think this only applies to 1200 amps or higher. Maybe Mike may be better than me on that. But the energy, trying to mitigate the energy, we have options that we could offer along those lines. So I hope that answers your question. For the most part, our unit is self-contained, and you would utilize the shunt trip on the breaker to perform, whatever it is you need to do. But we don't offer currently any direct solution where we're controlling anything outside of the company switch.
Okay, great. Here's another good question. Is the front door interlocked so that is it interlocked with the circuit breaker to prevent the door from being opened until the circuit breaker is turned off?
That's a great question. Yeah, actually, if you look at this between the left and the middle picture there, you can kind of see that the way the handle works. Hopefully it's kind of clear. So the handle's really integrated into the door. So to answer that question, the power will not turn on until you open the door. Once the door is open, the power is completely off. And once you close the door and engage the handle, turn it clockwise half a click, it will engage the breaker again, and now power is available. Power is present at the cam receptacles. So in that way, it's completely safe. And Michael, I'm trying to look at the questions, and it like cuts off the bottom of the. I'm only seeing like half of one line. Okay.
Okay, I'll read that again.
Did that answer that question? Because I felt like kind of there was a little bit of like we want the handle to control something beyond the break. Currently, I can say the handle just controls the breaker. And so that's the whole idea: is you open the door, the unit's dead, you close the door and engage the handle, and it's live again. And that's 100% how that works. There's nothing else to it really.
So just to confirm, the door will only open if the handle is in the off position.
Well, yes, the handle is actually a mechanical interlock. So it's opening the door and killing the circuit breaker all at the same time.
Yeah.
So yes,
okay.
Absolutely. You can't There is a secret way to defeat the handle, but you need to, get into a little secret notch with a screwdriver. But yes, for the most part, no. I mean, it was designed this way on purpose, so it's both a way to open the door and kill the circuit breaker. There's no way to disconnect those two things, if you know what I mean. It's
yes.
So yes, the front door is interlocked to the circuit breaker, and it doesn't technically prevent the door from being opened until the circuit. It actually, you just can't open. Yes, actually, that is true. The way that the question is asked, yes, that is true. You cannot gain access to anything live unless you unless you close the door. You cannot access any live parts at any time when the door is open because it's interlocked to the circuit breaker. Absolutely. So
okay.
in that center picture right there, that unit's dead. Over on the left picture, the unit's live, assuming that the handle is engaged all the way.
Okay, great. Here's a question. Off and not in use. Sounds like he's looking to see if the handle is padlockable.
Yes, the handle is padlockable. If you look at the picture on the left currently, there's a little white strip in the middle of the handle, vertical section. That's actually, it actually pulls out a little bit, and there's a hasp through there where you lock. And so, that's for lockout. You can lock it in the off position. And then additionally, on the bottom, you can see over on the white unit, if you look closely at the bottom of the doors on the lower right section, you'll see the hasps down there. You could also padlock the door closed. So we have both of those options.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you offer any special options against vandalism?
That's a good question. There are a couple of things. Recently, we did a project for an outside venue, like a fairground, where the company switches are really exposed to the public quite a bit. And so what we did was we created doors. They go over the top of the doors and completely, they're just bare metal. And the idea being was to, so that people aren't curious and want to go over and, they see the lights and the handle and so forth. So to answer the question, that's one way, in which we, offer protection against vandalism. We have an additional door, and that locks onto the front of the company switch, if it was in an open area. I will say a lot of times that these are in restricted areas, not all personnel and public are able to get to them, so it isn't as much of an issue, vandalism. But beyond that, the box, for instance, the flush mount box in the middle there, it's very difficult to even, assuming it's locked, there's really nothing that you could do to it much, maybe spray paint it or something like that, I suppose. But as far as anything dangerous or getting into the electrical workings, yeah, there's just no opportunity. There's a hatch on the bottom that's locked in place by the door, which is where you gain access to the portable cables. So that's on the right unit. On the center flush mount unit, the same idea. That trap door on the bottom, once you close the door, if there's no cables plugged in, then there's no access to the inside of it. So in all of our company switches, there's no access to the inside as long as it's properly secured, and the outside is very sturdy. So yeah, I think that they're pretty safe. And as I mentioned, we even have ways to mitigate that. The door on the front is one. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. That's
okay, great.
That's a great question. Yeah.
Here's another good one. Do you include a surge protective device in the company switch, or is it an option?
It is an option. Yeah, it's not standard, but it is something that we could provide. It's been requested before, and yeah, certainly something that we can provide. We're happy to provide that as an option.
Okay, wonderful. Is there a way to put a label on the outside of the unit so that you can see the circuit breaker ratings, like the amp ratings and KA ratings, and maybe even the settings, so that you don't have to open the door to get to the breaker?
Yes, as a matter of fact, you'll see on the left unit there, the pad mount unit, in the lower left, the nameplate has all of the ratings engraved directly into it. And even, it's kind of hard to see, but the one that's underneath the handle, that large black nameplate there, it says show power supply, and it says 200 amps and calls up the voltage 208Y 120. So yeah, all that information actually is directly on the outside of the switch and can be readily seen, without gaining access to the inside. And a label could be, to answer that question, a label certainly could be put on the outside as well. It'd have to be a good label, though. It's got the slightly rough powder coat surface. We apply the nameplates obviously because they're more sturdy and it's engraved. It should last for years. So, but all those ratings are indicated on the outside of the units. Yes.
Great. And I assume you could add, if there was information like the breaker KA rating or withstand rating, that information could be added.
Yes, absolutely. If somebody felt like they needed, some additional information, let's see. I don't think that this will. No, I was wondering if that would give me a good. I think. I mean, this includes a catalog number on this nameplate right here, and I think it includes even the KAIC. We actually put everything that we thought was pertinent onto that nameplate. So, but you could also add that, and if somebody had a special requirement that they wanted to, a piece of information that isn't currently on there, we could certainly look at adding that. That's not a problem. We're very, customer focused. So if some additional information was needed on there, we can add it. But it's pretty comprehensive right now. Basically, it'll say, this is a 400 amp unit, 208Y 120, 65 KAIC. You know what I mean? It's quite clear. All that's printed, engraved directly into the nameplate on the front.
Yes. Yep. All right, here's a good question. How do you detect that a load is plugged into the neutral and ground connectors?
Currently, we have a switch assembly inside that detects that the plug is actually plugged into the cam receptacle. And so that's, to answer the question, that's how we detect it.
That's great. Okay, so you actually have a relay unit so
yes,
that it mechanically moves and closes the contact when the plug is in place.
That is correct. That is correct. And reading into that question a little bit, I think we don't do a lot of, I saw in some of the literature for very old company switches from, say like the 80s, 90s, stuff like that, there's a lot of concern about the cams being on the outside and plugging in the right order and not having cables plugged into cams. I will say on our unit, part of the beauty of it is I mean, as I say, the interlocked door allows you to gain access. You could plug those cables in. You could plug whichever cables in you want. And until you close the door, it's not going to make any difference. Everything's dead. So as I said, reading into that question, I think that, if you're checking to see if the ground and the neutral are plugged in or not, there is you are relying on the user to an extent. As I mentioned, we can reverse the ground and the neutral as well, which prevents people from accidentally plugging a male cam into one of those, plugging the phase into a ground or neutral. But yes, currently the way that we are detecting if the plug is engaged is with a micro switch assembly. It's up there behind that dead front in the middle. And we use that for the indicator light as well. It's clicks on the indicator light to indicate that there's actually a plug engaged on that cam. So I hope that answers that question all right, and goes towards the heart of it, I think, which is making sure everything's plugged in the right order and everything's plugged in. But as I mentioned, if somebody didn't plug anything in correctly, short of actually crossing a phase over to ground or neutral, there would really be no problem when you go to turn the switch on. If you don't have them all plugged in, well, as a matter of fact, sometimes people will use these company switches. They'll pull one phase off, and if it has a double neutral, they'll pull one neutral off. That'll run one set of equipment through a spider box, say, and then they'll use another phase and another neutral and run that off to another set of equipment. So it's pretty versatile in that way. So and what I'm getting at with that is that, ideally, you want to have all three phases plugged in and neutral and ground all plugged in. You want to plug all that in properly before you actually engage the company switch. But we don't have an overarching way to verify that they are all plugged in. I know sometimes company switches will have dummy plugs in the bottom of them. So you plug in the dummy plug to tell the company switch that there's a plug in that particular cam. But that's used almost exclusively when the cams are on the outside of the unit. There's a danger of having an exposed cam. So as I mentioned, in our case, all the cams are inside the chamber and completely safe. And if you didn't plug in a cam, well, it would really not be a big deal when you close the door and turn on the switch. I mean, you would figure it out, I assume, but there would be no danger. So we feel like that's pretty important.
Okay, we have another question, and that is, are there spare parts available, and are they available on short notice?
The answer is yes, there are spare parts available, and they lead time varies on some of the things, but for the most part, we have a pretty good stock of parts for building these company switches. So yes, they're available on a short notice. I would say if it was a 100% rated circuit breaker, that one might be a lead time involved with it from our vendors. But most of the items are easily replaceable, quickly replaceable. And I will say that I almost never get any inquiries. We have, tens of thousands of company switches out there, and they're super sturdy. I almost never get any kind of, every now and then an indicator light or something like that. But yes, they are available, and they're available on short notice.
Great. There's another question about the interlock here. I think we'll get back to you on that one, and we'll send you an email with a drawing. But if I could, it's very difficult to describe something like that with words. But if you think of a key going into a lock, and if you turn the key to make the breaker closed, the key won't come out. So the handle will not come away from that stud. If you look at the middle picture, there's that's part of the mechanism to turn the breaker on and off. And when you turn it on, there's a rectangle on the end of that stud, and once you turn the breaker on, that slot or that head goes into a slot and turns 90 degrees, and then it's locked in. So there is no opening the door when the breaker is closed. Then when you open the handle, the rectangle is aligned with the slot so that now the door be opened. I hope that makes sense. We'll try to send you a picture. Here's another good question.
That was well described, Mocha. Yeah, it's as you say on the center picture here, really you can get the sense. So you see over on that left side on the door right there's just an opening where the handle is actually mounted, as you see over here in the left picture. And the handle is actually mounted to the door. It's integral to the door. And then this part right here, the opening, as you said, is keyed to the shaft that's sticking through the dead front, which is coming out of the circuit breaker. So really, it's like you just have to align the shaft, which is what you're doing when you close the door. It's automatically aligned, and you click it to the right, engaging the handle. And so that's, hopefully, as you say, we can provide some more, detail. Yeah. But absolutely, yeah, it's actually a very simple. It's actually a very simple solution.
Yeah, that's the same mechanical interlock you guys use on the company switches. I mean, the storm switches and triple switches, correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we're really big into mechanical interlock. It seems like a really, safe and secure way to do things. So, unless you kill that breaker by turning the handle, which also opens the door, you're just not, it's not going to be alive. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Looks like we have the final question, which is another great question. Are the indicator lights push to test, or is this an option?
No, they are not, and there is currently no option like that. And I don't think, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. But on these units, the simplicity of it, I mean, we there's bus going from the circuit breaker to the cam locks. So I don't even know if you would. It sounds like that question is geared towards making sure that power is available, kind of thing. The indicator lights are just indicator lights. They're not push to test, and we don't have any kind of push to test. It's just not standard on company switches, I will say. If you had to pop off the dead front that you see in that middle picture right there, you would have access to the circuit breaker, which you could do a little further troubleshooting. But really, the only electrical component in there, the main one of interest is the circuit breaker. So, no, we don't have any push to test functionality.
Bill, he just know if a light's burned out, one of the indicating lights is burned out.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I will say we switched to LEDs most recently, which have a very, as everybody knows probably, they're seem to last forever and seem pretty reliable. So yeah, I suppose in the case where you were unsure if it was the light had burned out or if there truly wasn't power available at that phase, yes, that would be an issue. So hopefully with LEDs, which is our most recent addition to the line, that'll be solved. All the company switches going forward are actually using LEDs now instead of neon lamps, and they seem very, very reliable. So
great. Yeah, that was probably. Well, if there's no more questions. Thank you so much, Bill, for your time, and I think it was a great presentation and educational, and hope to have you again soon on another one of our lunch webinars.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah, we love you guys at L3. Thanks to all the attendees, and yeah, I hope it was informational, and I hope to see you soon.